Thank you, Jan. Good morning. As we enter into this service, let me remind those of you in the sanctuary, now would be a good time to silence your cell phones. And those of you participating on Zoom, you have been muted by our host. Also be advised this service is being recorded and with the exception of joys and concerns, will be published online. Finally, if you wish, take a moment and arrange your own chalice at home. Remember, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide. John Adams. Diane will light our chalice here in the sanctuary. Those of you at home are invited to light your own chalice now. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind our remote participants to leave yourselves muted. However, we want to make you and whoever is with you to sing with us as big and loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. Let us sing the opening hymn, Not in Vain the Distance Beacons. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We're glad you've joined us today. Our UUCC sanctuary sits on land that the Salinan and Chumash indigenous peoples historically inhabited. We honor their contribution to this region and give thanks for the opportunity to gather in faith on their unceded territory. Let us respect their legacy and protect their history as we occupy the sacred space. As Unitarian Universalists, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation run by the democratic process. We invite speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest that connect with the UU 7 principles. Today's service, entitled Democracy at Work in Cambria, centers around the first, second, and fifth principles. What happened to the other ones? Okay. Unitarian Universalists believe that all the dimensions of our being carry the potential to do good. We can use our gifts to offer love, to work for justice, to heal injury, to create pleasure for ourselves and others. Justice, equity, and compassion points to the larger community. It gets at collective responsibility. We can demonstrate openness, give people respect, and treat people with kindness on our own. But we need one another to achieve equity and justice. In our religious lives, the democratic process requires trust in the development of each individual conscience, as well as a commitment to cultivate our own conscience. In the words of Theodore Parker, democracy means not, I am as good as you are, but you are as good as I am. My connection is only as precious as the willingness to acknowledge the same connection in others. My name is Dolores Miera, and I'm your worship associate for this morning's service. I'd like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you joined us this morning. If you are not on the mailing list, please visit the UUC website at uuccambria.org or Diane, and so we can keep you informed about our activities. Members and friends, please check out what's happening and the e-blast sent to you every week. It's a great way to keep up to date with our latest news. If you wish to see this or any of the past Zoom services, the recordings can be found on the UUCC website and on Facebook. The membership committee invites non-members to consider joining the UUCC. Please contact Diane or a person on the board if you are interested. But all the board members, raise your hand. Okay, right. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of this community as well as a promise to which we aspire. Let us now recite the UU affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. We set aside this time for any announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. If something needs more explanation, contact that person after the service. If you'd like to make an announcement, please raise your hand. When Andy or I call your name, please step up to the podium or unmute yourself and then speak. Judy? Oh, and then Mary.
Good morning. I just want to tell you about a new book I am adding to the library. Andy Fagan specifically requested and thought it would be a wonderful idea to have this book. It is called The 7 Principles in Word and Worship. And I just got it this week. It's going in the bookstore. in the bookstore, in the library. Sorry, work in a bookstore, can't get past that. Anyway, check it out.
Hi, all. If you look around us, you'll see that there aren't a lot of young families and children here. As much as we'd like to grow diversity inside our congregation, we can't make them come to us, so we have to go out to them. And one of the biggest ways that we give back to our community is through our scholarship committee. We touch the lives of several children every year. So I am encouraging you right now, today, to dig deep and write a check at the bottom, write it for you, UCC, and at the bottom, add a little special for the scholarship committee. Thank you.
Good morning. Whoa. And thank you for this Academy Award. As I was saying, tomorrow at 4 o'clock, the worship committee is meeting via Zoom. And so all the members, please attend, and all of you who are interested in attending, please get in touch with me and I'll send you a link. And also, a week from this afternoon, next Sunday afternoon, the Atascadero Community Band is doing another spring concert at the Atascadero Bible Church. It's a big, huge sanctuary. It's like an auditorium. And we're doing a music about the great outdoors. So come if you can. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be conducting. That's it.
Andy?
Yeah, Janet has her hand raised. If you would unmute and share, Janet.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Yeah, I'm just checking in to remind you that today is Fourth Sunday and we'll be collecting for the food bank. So please give generously. The food bank's services have been very well attended. We actually, November and December, we had almost as many clients as the Cambria Food Bank distribution, which is phenomenal because St. Simeon's a very small community. So the need's great. Please remember the food bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
That's it in Zoom. Dolores, I'll just remind everyone that our meditation group continues meeting Thursday mornings at 10 a.m. You all are welcome to join us for a lovely meditation time.
Next week, Mary Ann Anderson will present The Quality of Mercy. And now, a message from your Board of Trustees. Last Monday, we had a meeting at 3 o'clock, and the board approved the revised budget for a membership vote after a late March service that we will have. Preparations for the tenting of Arlington to get rid of our termites, okay, is April 21st. So we won't have service here that Sunday, 23rd. And the AV team was invited to offer a proposal to upgrade our equipment if needed. And they said, nah, wouldn't be worth it. Okay. Strategies to increase volunteerism in the community were discussed. And I'd like to, right before joys and concerns, this is a joy. And I'd like to thank everybody who participated in the board retreat, who offered presentations, and for all of those people that came. And if you didn't get a chance to come this year, if we invite the whole congregation, which we tend to, please come. It's a lot of fun and very insightful. So I'd like to thank Diane DeMarco in particular and Sue Davis. They ran separate presentations. So now, sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as part of your personal life. But please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. We have the collective flames of these candles embody all the joys and concerns which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. Please join in singing the response.
May our words of joy and sorrow lead us to unity and peace.
The first reading is from the introduction to High Conflict, Why We Get Trapped and How We Get Out by Amanda Ripley. High conflict is different from the useful friction of healthy conflict. That's good conflict, and it's a force that pushes us to be better people. Good conflict is not the same as forgiveness. It has nothing to do with surrender. It can be stressful and heated, but our dignity remains intact. Good conflict does not collapse into caricature. We remain open to the reality that none of us has the answers to everything all the time, and that we are all connected. We need healthy conflict in order to defend ourselves, to understand each other, and to improve. These days, we need much more of it, not less. High conflict, by contrast, is what happens when conflict clarifies into good versus evil kind of feud, the kind when an us and them. In high conflict, the normal rules of engagement no longer apply. In this state, each encounter with the other side, whether literal or virtual, becomes more charged. The brain behaves differently. We feel increasingly certain of our own superiority, and at the same time, more and more mystified by the other side. Let us enter a place of peace and serenity where you are one with your spiritual being. Be at peace within your space where the absence of all that is temporal is its most cherished gift. Let us enter the stillness. May we find the compassion and empathy we need to strengthen relationships. May we find ways to love each other well. May we not judge or condemn, but rather build a beloved community. Second reading is a poem titled "Elephants Are Different to Different People" by Carl Sandburg. Wilson and Pilser and Snack stood before the zoo elephant. Wilson said, "What is its name? Is it from Asia or Africa? Who feeds it? Is it a he or a she? How old is it? Do they have twins? How much does it cost to feed? How much does it weigh? If it dies, how much will another one cost? If it dies, what will they use the bones, the fat, and the hide for? What use is it besides to look at?" Pilser didn't have any questions. He was murmuring to himself, It's a house by itself, walls and windows. The ears come from tall cornfields, by God. The architect of those legs is a workman, by God. He stands like a bridge out across deep water. The face is sad and the eyes are kind. I know elephants are good to babies. Snack looked up and down and at last said to himself, "It's a tough son of a gun outside, and I'll bet he's got a strong heart. I'll bet he's strong as a copper riveted boiler inside." They didn't put up any arguments. They didn't throw anything in each other's faces. 3 men saw the elephant 3 ways and let it go at that. They didn't spoil a sunny Sunday afternoon. Sunday comes only once a week, they told each other. Let's now sing, "Blessed Spirit of My Life."
Blessed Spirit of my life, give me strength through stress and strife. Help me live with dignity. Let me know serenity. Fill me with a vision. Clear my mind of fear and confusion. When my thoughts go restlessly, let peace find a home in me. Spirit of great mystery, hear the still small voice in me. Help me live my wordless creed as I comfort those in need. Fill me with compassion, be the source of my intuition. When life is done for me, let love be my legacy.
Today's sermon is titled "Democracy at Work" in Cambria, to be delivered by Andy Fagan and Don Howell. Don spent most of his grade school and all of his high school years in Kansas City, Missouri. During high school, he became active in Liberal Religious Youth, LRY, group at the All Souls Unitarian Church in Kansas City, serving for a time as the group's president. In fact, during his adolescence, the LRY kids were his most significant peer group. Don graduated high school in 1960, got his BA in anthropology from the University of California at Santa Barbara in 1965, and an MA in ethnomusicology from the University of Hawaii in 1975. It was at the University of Hawaii that Don began his love affair with Javanese gamelan music, which continues to this day. In 1976, he moved back to Santa Barbara and became involved with the Santa Barbara UU Church. He sang in the choir and reconstituted the church's Building and Grounds Committee. Judy, I thought you'd like to know that. He served as committee chair for 2 years, organizing volunteer work parties and spearheading a major renovation of the church's parsonage. Don had a 20-year career in information technology at UCSB. While at UCSB, Don started his Javanese gamelan experience with the ethnomusicologists in the music department. He has continued to support the UCSB gamelan ensemble either through his own teaching or by recruiting others to teach. After his retirement, Don moved to Cambria full-time in 2005. Around 2013 or 14, he became concerned about the operation of Cambria Community Services District and the move to create an emergency water supply. He began attending and speaking at meetings. His point of view resonated with others, and in 2018, he succumbed to their urging and stood for election to the CCSD Board of Directors. He has just retired from his 4-year term, serving the last year as board president. He remains involved in district affairs. He is a member of the CCSD Policy Standing Committee and attends and speaks at board meetings as a member of the public. Andy Fagan is in his 3rd year as vice president of UUCC Board of Trustees and serves on the worship committee. Andy will interview Don for this talk. Don and Andy.
Hello, Andy. Is this on?
I hope so. And Randy, when you get a chance, could you just check the Zoom audio over there to make sure we're coming through? Thanks. So good morning, everyone. Hello, Don.
Good morning, Andy.
I'm honored to be here talking with you today. Thank you for sharing with us. So Don, as a starter, why don't you give us a little background on your religious history?
Okay. Well, as the bio said, I spent most of my life, my pre-adult life in Kansas City, Missouri, as a member, as a youth of the All Souls Unitarian Church there. So what shall I say? I've been basically a Unitarian as long as I can remember. In fact, is this better here? Get it down there. Okay, there we are. Thank you. Yes, I'm not. Usually, I just speak out. So yeah, actually, I have a memory of Unitarian churches when I was 5 years old in Iowa City. There was one of the more Transylvania style old churches with a half timber thing. So it goes that far back. So I have that that background, and then a very, very strong admixture with Quaker philosophy. As it happened, the All Souls Church and the Kansas City Society of Friends, the Friends Society actually shared the building with the Unitarians. They were meeting in the basement on Sunday evenings, and my parents got involved in that way. And so I acquired some of their philosophy. I don't remember, well, the two items which will reappear with the Unitarian background. It was the idea that and this is before they became UUs, so the essence of that was the acceptance, or at least acceptance that there may be multiple points of view about reality and about what's good, and so that was the basis of that. But from the Quakers came this, which we now have, and I see it in our first principle, which I think we got mostly from the Universalists, is that in each person there is this spark of the divine. So that's what I got from the Quakers.
Thanks, Don. And this will be another service, but in our preparing for this talk, Don was around when the merger happened. He was already involved in the Unitarian Church, which became the UU Church, Unitarian Universalist. So he's got some interesting and recollections of that. But like I say, that's sort of a different topic. So let's move on, Don. Let's move on to your professional years. You, as you said, as we heard in your bio, you were a database administrator and a gamelan music instructor. How did your UU principles and values relate to those pursuits?
Oh, thank you. Well, they kind of all work together, but again, we come back to the importance of each person and their individual lived experience. For me, and I don't know that it was that I may have gravitated to this sort of occupations just because I'm the kind of person I am, or it might be because of my religious training. It's hard to say, but I tended to gravitate towards activities where the success of the activity depended upon the success of the other people. For example, as a database administrator, my job was to make life easy for the programmers and assist them in their system designs. So if they succeeded, then I succeeded. So and it was, of course, incredibly satisfying. And in those ancient days, it seems like my office, there was always a line of people out the door waiting for consultation. At the more group level, the most obvious situation is the gamelan music, which is I can't imagine a group activity that is more group activity. The entire musical experience is really a negotiation amongst all the players within a certain framework, and again, it appealed to me so strongly that I'm still doing it, because I just loved it so much. So it's those kind of things, and then it's professional life now, right?
Well, we'll get to that, but also the Building and Grounds
that's
Committee.
that's where I was going.
How did they receive your guidance?
That's where I was going. So when I was, we won't worry about the time frame too much. When I was in Santa Barbara, they had a Buildings and Grounds Committee, which was not really, they hadn't kind of been very functional, and the lady who was doing it contacted me and asked me if I'd take over, because at that time I was also a real estate broker. So I took it over, got volunteers, and we had a number of volunteer workings at the church to beef it up and clean their patio and do all that. And then ultimately, when the ministers changed and a new minister, preparing for a new minister, the parsonage that was next door to the church, which was in very bad repair, again, with both volunteers and contractors working to renovate that property. So again, it's this issue of getting people to work together. And it wasn't, oh, I did it. They did it. And that's what, it just gives me great pleasure whenever I see that one happening.
And you love to stress how the first and second principles relate to that, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the need for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. All right, so now we move on to Director Howell.
Okay.
Former Director Howell, you're happily retired. Dolores cited the fifth principle, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregation and in society at large. Can you give us a brief explanation of, before we get into more about the CCSD, about the Brown Act? Share with us how that affects the democratic process and how you brought it, how it affected your time at the Cambria Community Services District.
Yes. And in the context of the Brown Act, I'll also refer to what I consider the basic covenant of democracy that makes it work, and it kind of works together. So I'll actually start with the covenant first and then go to the Brown Act. So for a democracy to work, you have basically, in my opinion, two rules that have to, two things that have to be present. Otherwise, we will end up like John Adams. And so it's not inevitable that democracies will fail, but what it is it does require cooperation of all the participants. So what you have is a covenant a covenant to follow the direction of the majority, even if we do not agree with it. We all do that. But for that to work, we also have to have a covenant amongst us that there will be regular opportunities to switch. So as for example, regular elections or other situations where that things can be, in other words, I lose the argument today, but I have an opportunity to win the argument 2 years from now. And as long as we all have faith that that's really going to happen, so it is a covenant. In other words, the losers have to agree, and the winners, more importantly, the winners have to agree. that they're going to risk their hegemony on a regular basis. So now moving on, so you have that principle. Then in addition, because we're dealing here with representative government, so we don't have a town hall system here in town, where our representatives are doing the governing. We elect them democratically, and then they democratically come to decisions. But the Brown Act, which is the other part of it, is that the decisions that your representatives make must be made in public, not in private. And this rule, which is a state law, applies to all legislative bodies under the legislature. The legislature doesn't follow it, of course, but in here we have the CCSD has to follow it, the school district has to follow it, the cemetery district has to follow it, all the CSDs, all the local governing bodies. It's required that they always conduct. There's three things. The meetings have to be noticed, and there's a certain time period, so they have to be properly noticed. The agendas have to be published. Actually, there's another principle. Only items on the agenda can be discussed at the meeting, and the meeting must be held in public. There's another one. Running out of, is that the public must be able, if at all possible, must be able to weigh in on the items that are being discussed.
So California has this act, which is unique to California.
Yeah.
Maybe other states have it, but it's called the Brown Act, and it oversees that entire process. And you stressed how the agenda, therefore, becomes the central issue.
That is it, yeah.
All right. So now that we all understand the Brown Act, you kept in mind in your service on the board the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Can you tell us about your original election process and some of the dynamics that occurred during that to get us started?
I have to think back. Well, the thing I can best tell you about the election process itself, which had to do with the count, my being out amongst people, that for me was personally a growth experience. Here I am now, 81 years old, and I was still learning things, just from doing that. What the essence, I probably knew it before, but it really came to me, and this brings me to Carl Sandburg's poem too. Everybody is complicated. Everybody is complicated. Nobody is all one thing. And it's really true. If you talk to people long enough, you'll discover that. So that, kind of intellectually knew it, but when I was out engaging people in the public, I could actually see that. From a distance, you might say, oh, there's these two positions, and they're either over here or over there. But when you actually talk to people, you'll see there's all the levels in between those two positions. So that's one thing. I just lost my train of thought. You'll have to help me.
Well, you were elected, but there were issues.
So yeah, and I was elected as part of, it was actually a reaction against prior actions of other boards in terms of the what we're now referring to as the water reclamation facility and how that came about. So there was a lot of resentment and a lot of what's the word? We'll just say resentment against prior actions. And so I was kind of coming in more on the side of the folks that would have been happier had the facility not been built, or that weren't happy with the way in which it was built. Now, my own opinion on that, I try to avoid to get too far, because here's the thing. Well, I think this is where I'm going. Yeah, in my speaking about these things, there's a tendency by folks to demonize the opposition. We begin to see this, we begin to see in those days, 4 years ago, Cambria was falling into high conflict. It really was. You got to the point where winning was the issue, and the people on the other side were demons and evil and had bad intentions and wanted to destroy the town, or there's a lot of impugning of people's motives. There was a lot of a desire to go look at the past and punish those people. And so I would step forward. And the other thing, which has always been the case for me, and it's sometimes a disadvantage, is I generally have been able to see multiple sides of a situation, because if you can sort of adopt it, if someone's saying something you might disagree with, you say, well, gee, that's weird. How could they rationally arrive at that? And then you kind of work your way around and say, well, if their life was like this, then they might have come to that point of view, you know. So in speaking, I was always tried to bring forward, no, these are not bad people. They were, perhaps we don't agree with their goals, but let's move forward from this. Let's not try beating people up. We can't go execute them. We can't skin them and sell their skins, and we can't push the facility into the ocean. We can't really do anything about what went in the past. We have to move forward. And that was kind of the position. And that, so that resonated with people, I think, on both, quote, sides, both sides of that particular issue. So I think there are many people that voted for me, not because I was against the facility, but because I was being a little more reasonable and treating people as more human beings and not evil spawns of the devil or what have you. Yeah.
So some of the folks who voted for you thought they had you in their pocket, I forgive the expression, and were surprised. Others accused you of being, because you sought compromise, you told me they accused you of being wishy-washy. What's your experience with compromise in that sense?
Yes. Well, again, it's this business of being able to see multiple sides of a question. And so it's often been, I found every time I come down really strong, I'll never do this or that. Almost invariably I do the, you know, so because so much as it has to do with circumstances, and issues are complex. So in this case, the midterm election 2 years ago, the board majority changed. When I was elected, I was on the minority, a 2 to 3 kind of minority, in the way, in just sort of a general, as I say, we were not trying to say, oh, if you're like this, then you're in this party. It wasn't, but there was nevertheless this feeling that, so when the majority changed, the folks that were more opposing, who had originally started as being very against the water reclamation plant, for example, I was urged to go ahead at this point and take control of the board, because we had that, we had come from a 2 to 3. Now we were in those people that were, as I hate using labels, but say the greener side of things as opposed to the bluer side of things. But I got people that worked for me and walked the streets for me would call me up and really push me to say, you must be president of the board. You've got it. You've got your majority. Go forward. Now is the time. And I refused to do it. I said, in my response, and what I actually did is that I supported the rotation of the executive committee, so that the person who was vice president moved into the presidency, and then someone else became vice president. It's the best thing for the community because you have continuity. It's the best thing for the board because it helps the board to keep control. Otherwise, if you have, full-on changes, then staff has control, and the tail starts wagging the dog. So I did that. And I had people said, we are so disgusted, I'm never talking to you again, and they still haven't. But in general, most people, I think, have that attitude of, well, let's work together. Let's not be so polarized, has communicated itself down to the rest of the community, I think, in many regards. So we don't see except with just very few individuals, that the evidence of the high conflict that we were beginning to see before.
And you found yourself working in harmony with the prior president.
Yes.
Through your presidency.
Yes, in fact, that's really a plus. Again, to show you how you can't really, people are not all one thing. So when I urged that the then vice president, who was in the minority side now, go ahead and assume the presidency, and then I got elected as vice president. So the two of us were having to work together. And boy, did I acquired such a respect for my fellow officer, such a respect for the person's talents and abilities and points of view. And we spent hours on the phone because we were coming from different positions. We would spend hours on the phone trying out ideas with each other and coming together to something that would work for both of us. It was a wonderful experience. And I developed just a great rapport and a great respect for my compatriots on the other side of the aisle. So that's kind of where it was. It's an illustration, though, that one last thing, because I wanted to bring, I see our time is going to. So we see that we had some high conflict. We begin to see, you know it's high conflict if you can't figure out what on earth are those people thinking that they could do that. We all know how this is going. But the other thing is the elephant story, which is the other part. This is the Unitarian elephant story is the blind man with the elephant. Well, we can't all know reality, but there's this and this. And the Sandberg one is a little different. But all three men could see all of the elephant. And yet, their conclusion, what they felt and said or thought about the elephant, were fundamentally different from each other. So that's and this is the illustration of what I found, is that people bringing their life experience and everything to any situation are going to see it differently. So you have your perspective changes things. When you move from here to there, things look different, and what you bring to the experience. So that's been something that always is in my mind now, probably more than it was before I took office. The message I want to make for everybody is there is hope. Cambria's democracy right now is alive and well in Cambria. And yes, it is. And it will stay that way as long as we are all stay engaged and we try very, very hard to remember Sandberg's poem and try very, very hard to understand that most of the people we disagree with are in fact rational human beings, and they probably have very good reasons for the position that they're taking.
That's a great wrap up, Don. I was going to ask you one more question, but I'll just remind everybody or tell everybody that you, to bring it back home, you expressed appreciation about how much the congregation supported you during your time on the CCSD. And I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but it was certainly something everyone should be aware of.
I thank you for bringing that up. Let me just say thank you to all of you. I don't think I could have really done it if I had just been this lone person, but with the support of, just the moral support of people behind you, the fact that I'm a gay man, for example, being able to be comfortable in society when it's not really relevant, but it's still something when I've had to grow up with, and just to have the acceptance of this congregation. And then also my friends here who have played gamelan with me from time to time, back in the days before the Great Isolation. It's enhanced both my own self-confidence, my feeling of connectedness to you all, and my connectedness to the community. I think it really helped me to engage me into the community.
Well, thank you, Don, so much. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being a part of this community, an important part. We appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
This morning's offering will now be given and received. Please remember, we are a self-sustaining congregation and provide all financial resources for our many ministries. Today is the fourth Sunday for the Slow Food Bank, so give generously. We recognize the spiritual value of generosity and invite you to participate. If you are viewing this service remotely, please use one of the methods shown on the screen. Thank you. Our thanks for all the gifts given and received for the work of this community. Now let's sing in praise of our UU faith tradition.
From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land by every tongue.
Let's sing the closing hymn, We Would Be One, number 318.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service with love and justice strive to make us free.
As we prepare to extinguish the chalice, let us recite the valediction. We extinguish the flame of this chalice, and we know that the light of truth and love and the warmth of this community go with us until we meet again. Please extinguish your chalice at home now. After the closing words, we encourage you to take a seat for any questions and comments. Now let's form a circle and join hands.
Oh, way too high here. Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Not used to being that tall. Second here. Okay. Okay. Ready? There we go. Okay. All right. Okay. If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace.